All right, Jillian, with me now is Reza Pahlavi, the exiled Crown Prince of Iran. Good to be with you,
John,
Mr. Pahlavi. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're very busy these days with everything going on in your country. So the president seems to have taken a move forward in terms of where he is on the idea of regime change. He said this to Politico over the weekend. He said, quote, "It's time to look for new leadership in Iran." It's further than he's gone before. How will that be taken in Iran by people who are rising up against the regime?
You know, John, everybody's talking about war. What is the first war going on? It's a war of the Islamic regime against its own people. Mm-hmm. We are at war with this regime. Now, defenseless, unarmed civilians have demonstrated in the last few days their total rejection of the regime. They took to the street, they chanted death to the dictator, they chanted that we want an end to this regime. In other words, it's way beyond protest. The response, massive massacre of our citizens. The regime utilizing military equipment from rifles mm-hmm. to tanks to brutalize and kill the people in an unprecedented way. And they continue to do that as we speak. They are in fact entering people's home, clubbering them. They have shot at the rooftops when people were chanting from the rooftops the last 2 days, ever since the internet disruption. So we are talking about an actual conflict. Now, I think the president was absolutely correct when he says there has to be a change of direction. And that's exactly what the Iranian people are asking
But
for.
If the Iranian people now had the support of the president on that idea, will that encourage them to take to the streets in even greater numbers and put more pressure on the regime from within?
Yes, and I think that the decisive factor would be the instrument of repression that has been unleashed mm-hmm. against our people is what is the ultimate obstacle to overcome. What changes the odds in favor of the people that can finally take over the system and push to a complete collapse depends on calculated strategic strikes against these institutions.
And those would be American strikes?
It would be, well, it could be an American strike, it could be Israeli strike, it could be whatever. The Iranian people now are looking as the cavalry coming, because we can only hold the fort up to a point.
Yep.
The cavalry can help us overcome the odds. Look, this is a regime so desperate that it has to import elements from Lebanon, from Afghanistan, from Iraq as instrument of repression, because they are running out of elements of their own doing the dirty job against them. This is what's at stake. So the regime right now is on its last leg. It's on the verge of collapse. It's going to attempt every other means to yet again survive. That's why a definitive strike is going to completely reverse the odds in favor of the nation and defenseless people. That's what we need in terms of actual support.
So what do you strike? Do you strike command and control facilities of the IRGC? Do you launch a decapitation strike to take out the Ayatollah? What would you suggest either the United States or Israel or whoever is willing to do it take on?
I think if you're asking from the perspective of the people on the streets, is you have to neutralize every element that has been unleashed against them. So anything that ties to the regime mechanism of Islamic violence. Well, it could be at first being targeting, of course, IRGC, which is the main culprit here, or any other instrument of state apparatus of control or violence. That's already a big plus. And that cannot come across via diplomacy or via negotiation. This is where the promise that the president has given has been very heartening to the people of Iran. And if that is carried out, then it changes, as I said earlier, the whole complexion.
So if the regime topples, the big question is what comes next? You have put your name forward as somebody who would lead a transitional government in Iran. Here's what President Trump said about you when he was asked. He said, quote, "He seems very nice, but I don't know how he'd play within his own country. And we really aren't up to that point yet. I don't know whether or not his country would accept his leadership. And certainly if they would, that would be fine with me." What would you say to President Trump about that?
I think he's absolutely right. Let the Iranian people determine who they want mm-hmm. for the leadership. But in recent weeks in particular, you see which name they called, whose name that they are chanting. It's my name. And why? Because I think my 46-year track record and my commitment to liberate this country and ultimately achieve a democratic alternative by means of free elections. So the Iranian people will determine what their future will be, and the leadership is out there. I'm humbled by the fact that they've been supportive of my role and asked me to step in to lead the transition, which is precisely what I'm doing, so we can go from here and ultimately have the Iranian people choose whatever they want at the end, and the interim government will turn over the direction of the country to the once elected new system in our country.
In recent days, Iranian state TV was hacked. It was almost like something out of a James Bond movie where the screen went like this, and suddenly you popped up with a message. How was that received?
Well, that's very empowering because for decades, this regime has, on the one hand, imposed maximum censorship. It has tried always to cut off our compatriots from the rest of the world, namely internet access or even the telephone lines in recent days. So when they get hit by a counterattack by people who are organized enough to have that level of penetration in terms of the digital warfare, I think anybody back home was, wow, let them get a taste of their own medicine.
So you said something very significant. You said a transition to democracy. It has been a long time since there's been democracy in Iran. It's been 75 years, pretty much. Even when your father was the leader of Iran, that was not democracy. Is Iran ready for a return to democracy? Can it do it? Because there are some places in the world where democracy doesn't exactly work.
I think that's the ultimate desire of every freedom-loving Iranian that is committed to a democratic alternative, to see that through. And right now, if you look at today's Gen Z of Iran, which constitute at least a third of the population, these are smart kids that have studied history. They understand the importance of strengthening institutions. They understand checks and balance system. They understand how society and citizens participate in the daily aspect of their governance. They know the free world as it is. They also know the non-free world. They know how it looks like in Pyongyang. They also know how it looks like in Washington. And what's important here, and I hope that especially the American viewers understand, the fact that you support this nation towards democratization is not just to liberalize the region and bring about something that is ultimately an element of stability, but what is the interest of America in all this? I think even President Trump remembers what Iran was like before the revolution, what kind of relationship we had with America. Look at the diaspora in America itself of Iranian Americans, how much they contribute to the progress and wealth of this nation. And ultimately, a different Iran will be comprised of people that are dedicated to that ideal. And I think there are not enough countries in the world that are democratic that can help us bring it and achieve it at the very end. But that changes the course of history. That's the first thing that will make America feel that they don't no longer have to have their 6 feet protecting the region, because now you have a viable, trusted partner that will work with you as your friend, not a regime that from day one called death to America. Well, that's the ultimate.
It could certainly change the entire face of the Middle East, though, as we have seen before, sometimes when there's a power vacuum, what fills the vacuum is worse than what came before it. So if this happens, we hope it happens the right way.
Thank you.
President Pahlavi, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.